Hello again, and welcome to Your Story Corner, the podcast. This is a safe space designed and created specifically to help you relax and unwind, to remind you that you are not alone. And no matter whatever's going on in the world right now, in your world, whatever it is, remember, it will pass. It will pass. And you are going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Here on Your Story Corner, we explore, read and share some of the world's most famous books, bedtime stories, poems, speeches from plays, and other surprises along the way, designed and created to just help you relax, and maybe help you settle down for a good night's sleep, or keep you company wherever you are. We're so glad you have found our podcast, and thank you for sharing and downloading. It's a great privilege to be able to read to you, wherever you are. If you are new to Your Story Corner and would like to find out more, you can find out more on our website, Yourstorycorner.com, or follow us across our social media channels. Or maybe join us for a live bedtime story. We go live on TikTok. You can find us there, and we'd love to see you. We've created a community of kindness from people from all around the world who come together to just find some peace and enjoy a good bedtime story. Today's episode is being released and streamed on the 14th of February. And of course, the 14th of February around most of the world is otherwise known as St. Valentine's Day. So on today's episode, I'm going to be exploring the origins of Valentine's Day, also reading you some famous poetry, poems and sonnets, exploring some famous love books. But of course, in this modern world that we now live in, much like the very beginnings of Valentine's Day, it has changed a great deal. And a very important part of love starts within and self-love. So to wrap up today's podcast, I will be exploring self-love and reading you some affirmations that I hope help in any way you need. So where do we start? Valentine's Day. Well, much like many famous works of love in plays and movies and books, it is a complicated one, shrouded in mystery. In fact, nobody actually knows for sure the true origins of Valentine's Day. It's charted back long time ago to a pagan ritual. Then many years later, with the rise of Christianity, it took on a different feel. In fact, the pagan ritual was outlawed, as it was deemed at the time unchristian around the turn of the 5th century, when the then Pope declared February the 14th St. Valentine's Day. However, it was not until much later that the day became, associated with love. Even more curiously, during the Middle Ages, it was commonly believed in France and England that February the 14th was the beginning of the birds' mating season. No mention of any bees. But this added to the idea that the middle of Valentine's Day should be a day for romance. The English poet Geoffrey Chaucer was the first, it is believed, to record St. Valentine's Day as a day of romantic celebration. In his 1375 poem, Parliament of Fowls. This was a very long writing, and with all of Chaucer's work, is to be explored in full. However, we haven't got the time here for me to read it all. But let me read a section where Valentines is mentioned. For this was on St. Valentine's Day, when every fowl comes there his mate to take, of every species that men know, I say. And then so huge a crowd did they make, that earth and sea and tree and every lake was so full that there was scarcely space for me to stand, so full was all the place. And as Alan in this compliment of nature describes her eye and paints her face, in such a eye might men there find her. So this noble empress, full of grace, bade every fowl to take its proper place, as they were wont to do from year to year, on St. Valentine's Day, standing there. A little part of the poet Geoffrey Chaucer's piece of work, the Parliament of Fowls. Now it is suggested that the poet might have linked Valentine's Day to romance more or less by chance. As I mentioned earlier, Valentine's Day was approximately the time when European birds started mating. But what about the first ever Valentine's card? Well, we'll get to William Shakespeare very shortly. But the other first notable Valentine's Day card dates to 1415, when the Duke of Orleans sent a card to his wife when he was a prisoner in the Tower of London. You can see the original scripture in the Tower of London, and also many scribes have studied this poem in the many letters he wrote. But here is now the one that is often claimed as the first Valentine ever sent, and it goes like this. Me, my very gentle Valentine, since for me you were born too soon, and I for you was born too late. God forgives him who has estranged me from you for the whole year. I am already sick of love, my very gentle Valentine. Often credited as the first Valentine ever sent, and as I stated at the beginning of the podcast, one surrounded in complications, as true love often is. We never know a true reaction to receiving the first Valentine's Day card, it is believed, in the form of a letter. But of course, many years later, true love was captured by arguably the world's famous poet, and that, of course, William Shakespeare. Shakespeare himself refers to Valentine's Day 3 times in his plays, and in much the same way we think of it now, as a day to celebrate love and romantic partners. But the use of it in arguably one of his most famous plays, Hamlet, it is a song sung by Ophelia, deeply traumatized by the news of the prince's betrayal and her father's passing. It's very dark, and, as you would expect, very powerful stuff from William Shakespeare. Further examples abound in other Shakespeare's plays, in King Lear, but of course, William Shakespeare had a very fascinating early life, and would you believe, his earlier career was scribbling greeting card verses. I wonder what William Shakespeare's views and thoughts would be now when he was to walk through his nearest greeting card shop to see many of today's modern love poems, full of wit and charm. I'm sure he would have been tickled pink. But of course it is A Midsummer Night's Dream, which probably contains the most accurate line Shakespeare ever wrote about true love, which of course it never did run smooth. And it's also important to remember that while Romeo and Juliet is widely considered one of the most romantic plays ever written, it also ends in tragedy. But of course, William Shakespeare has another famous Cupid bow in his feathered breast. That, of course, was his many sonnets. I'm now going to read two of probably the most well-known, and I'll start with Sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate, though rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leaf hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, where in eternal lines to time thou growest. So as long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with a remover to remove. Oh, no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth unknown although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his breath hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proven, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Just two of many of Shakespeare's sonnets, often recited, and I hope you enjoyed them. There are many, as I mentioned, famous works of Shakespeare which explores love, and if I'm often asked what is my favourite, my response is always Much Ado About Nothing. If you ever get the chance to see a production of it, or see a film production of it, the most famous, of course, being the Kenneth Branagh, Emma Thompson version, highly recommended. Very witty and very funny, and it still translates to this day. Could even be a modern rom-com, as it is called now, but well worth checking out. And the story of Benedict and Beatrice. This is Your Story Corner, the podcast. Thank you for downloading and listening and sharing. We are thrilled to see so many of you are enjoying the podcast, and if we can ask a little cheeky request, if you are enjoying our podcast, please leave us a review or rate us. It helps us reach more people, and we'll be so grateful. Depending if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it helps us immensely, and we'd love to hear from you also. If there are any stories or books or any themes you would like us to explore and talk about, we'd love to hear you. We've got great plans for the podcast to make it a comforting companion to our lives on TikTok. So get in contact. We'd love to hear from you, and we hope you find it very comforting. More famous love poems for you now, and sonnets. One of my favorites is actually by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. It's called Sonnet 43, and it's called How Do I Love Thee? How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight for the ends of being and ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose. With my lost saints I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God chose, I shall but love thee better after death. Nothing sums up the feeling of complete and total devotion felt in this Sonnet 43 by Elizabeth Browning. By the time she met her much younger husband, Robert, she was already well known on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, but poor health and overprotective family kept her almost a prisoner in her own room. But she was able, I believe when the age of 40, to elope, and they fled to Italy, where her newlywed bliss continued. And again, there are many other works I'd urge you to explore, but that being one of my favorites and most well known. Talking about well known and favorites gives me great excuse on this Valentine's Day themed podcast to reread one of my personal favorite poems of all time. Had I the heavens embroidered cloths and wrought with golden and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark cloths of night and light and the half-light. I would spread the cloths under your feet, but I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread under my dreams. The Irish poet William Yeats wrote this poem, would you believe, for a fiery Irish revolutionary and an actress in 1889. And one of the most beautiful love poems ever written. Uses repetition to emphasize forlorn yearning. But it's been referenced many times in songs and movies, and one of my absolute favorites. Of course, there are many famous love books around the world, Gone with the Wind, and many, many more. But one of my favorite books is Captain Corelli's Mandolin. If you've never read it, fully recommend it. And I think it is all summed up in this little section I'd like to read to you. And it goes like this. When you fall in love, it is a temporary madness. It erupts like an earthquake and then subsides. And when it subsides, you have to make a decision. You have to work out whether your roots are to become so entwined together that it is inconceivable that you should ever part. Because this is what love is. Love is not breathlessness. It is not excitement. It is not the desire to mate every second of the day. It is not lying awake at night, imagining that he is kissing every part of your body. No, don't blush. I am telling you some truths. For that is just being in love, which any of us can convince ourselves we are. Love itself is what is left over when being in love has burned away. Doesn't sound very exciting, does it? But it is. From Captain Corelli's Mandolin, one of my favorite chapters. There are, of course, many love books I could have picked from. Brokeback Mountain. I wish I knew how to quit you. How many times have you heard that? A modern favorite, and one of my teenage daughter's favorite, is The Notebook. There's a famous quote from that goes, "I am nothing special, just a common man with common thoughts, and I've led a common life. There are no monuments dedicated to me, and my name will soon be forgotten. But in one respect, I have succeeded as gloriously as anyone who's ever lived. I have loved another with all my heart and soul, and to me, this has always been enough." And of course I could talk about Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice, and many, many more. What is your favourite romantic story to get lost in? Maybe it is time to discover a new one, or return to a warm favourite. Reading, after all, is love for your soul. And it's to self-love we turn. It can be easily mistaken that Valentine's Day is for those very happily and blissfully in love with their partners and true love, but also to love another is to love oneself. And self-love, very common terminology nowadays, is more important than ever. Saying affirmations, you know, those positive phrases we use to build ourselves up, I believe, can feel like giving yourself a verbal hug. But after all, standing in front of a mirror and telling yourself, I am beautiful and I am fabulous, can sometimes not feel so good. The most useful affirmations must feel genuine and encouraging. A good affirmation can help us learn how to speak to ourselves with compassion and kindness, instead of which criticism and malice can interfere with. Affirmations help us achieve greater possibilities for us, for those we love, and for the world around us. They can remind us of our potential and the potential for good in our lives and the world. And you know the good thing is, you don't have to just read them on Valentine's Day. You can do this every day. The trick, I believe, is finding an affirmation that nurtures your own feelings and hopes without veering into toxic positivity territory or denying your reality. I often say, you may have in your life somebody where if they messaged you or texted you, you would drop everything for if they were crying for your help. We've all had those phone calls, those text messages, I need you to come round, something's happened. And we grab a bag of popcorn and maybe a bottle of wine or non-alcoholic beverage and we rush round because we'd be there for them. Could be a best friend, partner, family member, work colleague. But of course you can take that to yourself and be your best friend. Listen to yourself. What do you need right now? There are many affirmations out there, and I have chosen just some. And I'll start with some that you could start your day with on a positive note. So you can listen to this whenever you want to, whenever you need to. So here are some affirmations to start your day on a positive note. May I experience something abundantly good today. Today I am stepping into boundless possibilities. Nothing matters more than love. I celebrate the love in my life. I celebrate the love that I control and choose to give. And I celebrate the love that is given to me. I am open to the opportunities today brings. Today, I will give myself space to grow. I am committed to personal growth today. Thank you, body, for my ability to... And you finish that sentence. Now you can listen back to those and repeat them back and repeat them after me. Or write them down and read them to yourself. Here are some affirmations to remind you that you are worthy of happiness and love. I am worthy of love just for being who I am. Love is a birthright for each and every one of us, me included. I am enough. I am deserving of contentment, joy, and peace. I deserve to feel happy and full of life. I belong here. I am kind to others and inspire others to be kind, and that feels great. I believe in my goodness. Everyone is worthy of love and care, and that includes me. Even if I don't feel like it applies to me. Some affirmations there to remind yourself that you are worthy of happiness and love, and you absolutely have a right to be here. Try reading them out loud. You may have heard me smiling I was reading them. Notice the difference if you can do that too. Of course, not every day is perfect, and that is a reminder to all of us that we are alive. So here are some affirmations for those days when that rain cloud appears above our heads. I never give up trying. I am deserving of kindness and compassion. May I experience comfort and peace in this difficult time. I never give up growing. I believe in my potential. I am doing the best I can with what I have in this moment, and that is okay. I am not broken. I'm human. I'm okay with my imperfections. Nobody is perfect. Failures and mistakes help me move forward. And of course, it's okay to not be okay. And to round off, to end the day with some reassuring calm before going to bed. may I enjoy a deep, restful sleep. My body and spirit are to be at rest. I give myself permission to have a restful sleep. I am grateful for what I did today. I will try again tomorrow. I'm ready for a peaceful sleep. I am safe and secure. I can rest comfortably. And a good way to end today's podcast on this Valentine's Day. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you are loved up, enjoy. If you are enjoying loving your single best self right now, I hope you found this helpful and comforting. And those affirmations you can go back and reread and re-listen over and over again. Or maybe go and explore the ones out there that work for you. In a future episode, I'll be sharing with you one of my heroes, who I've often mentioned on my live podcast, Dr. Edith Edgar. But that's for another time. Now it is time to tuck ourselves in and enjoy that peaceful sleep. Thank you for listening to Your Story Corner, the podcast. We'll be back again for another episode. Thank you again for downloading and sharing and listening. Please feel free to share it with many people out there so they also know that they, like you, are not alone. You can find out more about us on Yourstorycorner.com and follow us on all our social media channels, and maybe join us for our next live bedtime story on TikTok. Until then, wherever you are, happy Valentine's Day and much love to you. Night.